Hey, what's up? Today I'm going over my Week 5 power rankings for college football. These rankings are different from the official AP Top 25 rankings. However, we will compare my power rankings to the official AP Top 25 to see how they compare. Let's get into it. Starting off at 25, I have the UCF Knights. The Knights are coming off a bye week, and after their last-minute win against TCU, I felt that the 25th spot was appropriate for them. The Knights face a Colorado team that is coming off a last-second result of their own that led to Buffalo's fans storming the field in Colorado. This game is going to tell us a lot about both teams' chances in the Big 12. Falling all the way to 24, I have Kansas State. Kansas State is coming off of a shock defeat at the hands of BYU, in a game where they weren't competitive at all. BYU easily silenced a Wildcats offense that had scored 30-plus points in back-to-back contests. Is this result an aberration or a sign of things to come for the Wildcats? After being unranked, the BYU Cougars find themselves making their power rankings debut at the 23rd spot. The Cougars' defense has been suffocating for opponents, allowing 15 points or less in each of their 4 games this year. Good enough for 23rd in the country. If the Cougars can keep this up, they could definitely challenge for the crown in the Big 12. Indiana finds themselves up 2 spots with a dominating 52-14 win over Charlotte. Indiana currently has the 3rd-ranked defense in the country and the 13th-ranked offense. The College Football Power Index also loves the Hoosiers, ranking them 15th with 12.7 FPI. So far, everything looks good when speaking about Indiana, but the Hoosiers haven't exactly played the stiffest competition, with UCLA being their hardest opponent thus far. And while they've done all they can and conquered the teams in front of them, they will definitely be tested this year, facing the likes of Michigan, Ohio State, and Nebraska. Another team making their debut on the power rankings is Illinois. Illinois is currently at 4-0 and finds themselves at the 21st ranking. In a thrilling top 25 matchup between Nebraska and Illinois, the Fighting Illini found themselves victorious. In a game that didn't deserve a loser, Nebraska finds themselves dropping out of my rankings. And while I do still believe in the Cornhuskers this year, I had to drop them out. The victorious team on Friday, Illinois, takes Nebraska's spot this week. Illinois was led by their quarterback Luke Altmaier, who was not going to be outdone by freshman QB Dylan Raiola. Altmaier threw for 215 yards and 4 touchdowns, leading his team to victory. Illinois has played well against some good teams already, but they will need to continue this week against Penn State. After Iowa State's 52-7 drumming of Arkansas State, the Cyclones move up 2 spots to 20th in my rankings. Iowa State has looked strong this season, but will face their toughest tests later in the season. Just outside the top 20, Clemson comes in at 19. Clemson is coming off a victory in the Textile Bowl against their rivals NC State. Clemson has had back-to-back impressive victories after their embarrassing loss to Georgia. I still have major questions about Clemson's defense, but their offensive game looks like it's rounding into form. Looking at the official AP Top 25 poll, we see that Boise State has made the voters' list at 25. If you want to hear my reasons on why Boise State is not in my top 25, stay until the end of the video. We also see that Texas A&M moved up 1 spot from where they were last week. And in the official poll, they had Kansas State moving down 10 spots to 23rd, whereas I have them 1 spot lower. Same thing with BYU, who makes both my list and the official list. The official list is way lower on both OU and Oklahoma State, who you will see on my list later in the video. I have both these teams ranked a little higher because I feel that losing to a highly ranked team like Utah or Tennessee should not drastically drop you, especially if you were competitive. And Illinois moves up 5 spots, while I have them at 21 on my list. So some similarities, but a big difference is where I have Oklahoma and Oklahoma State coming in. At 18, I have Louisville. The Louisville Cardinals move up 1 spot from where they were last week. They come off an impressive win against Georgia Tech. And while you could argue that they should be higher on my list, they still have yet to play some of the ACC conference big boys. Oklahoma falls 3 spots after their 25-15 loss against Tennessee, benching their quarterback Jackson Arnold in the process. Oklahoma has shown some weaknesses in their game that they will need to get ironed out if they plan on being competitive in their first year in the SEC. Oklahoma State looked bad for 3 quarters against the Utes this weekend in Boone Pickens Stadium. However, an Alan Bowman heave to the end zone started a rally that left Utah on their heels, but was ultimately unsuccessful. I think the real question is that for 3 quarters, was Utah really that good or Oklahoma State performing that poorly? Oklahoma State will have some more questions asked of them this week when they take on Kansas State, where a loss could see the loser falling out of the top 25. After losing to a Michigan team without a quarterback, the Trojans fall to 15 in this week's rankings. I hate to do it, and I wish we could be talking about how this Trojans team could be one of the best we've seen in a while. But they completely dropped the ball this past week. In the first half, USC looked overmatched and outplayed. They looked like they were not ready for the Big Ten and would get eaten alive in this conference. But after some halftime adjustments, the Trojans came out fighting and closed the gap on a Michigan team that, due to their offense, is unlikely to pull away in a game. They fought to the end, scoring 21 of their 24 points in the final half, but the Michigan defense was able to close the game out. The Trojans will have a chance to rise in the rankings, but this was a huge missed opportunity. Michigan rises 4 spots from 18 to 14, and while beating USC was impressive, Michigan still has major questions at quarterback. You can only get so far with a good ground game and an elite defense. And while this Michigan defense has all the talent in the world at their disposal, the unit is not playing particularly well, ranking outside the top 50 in total defense. I don't know how far this team can go with no quarterback and an underperforming defense in a tough Big Ten conference. But due to their win against USC, they rise nonetheless. Notre Dame also finds themselves climbing the rankings from 17 to 13. Notre Dame won this past week against a clearly inferior Miami of Ohio team, holding them to just 3 points. While they do go up, it's more a result of other teams around them falling rather than Notre Dame's impressive results. They do have a chance to continue to rise in the rankings with a solid performance against 18th-ranked Louisville. Looking again at the official rankings, we see that Iowa State is higher at 18 than my ranking of 20th. Clemson is also a couple spots higher than where I have them. The official poll has Notre Dame 3 spots lower, and Louisville is 3 spots higher than my ranking of 19. LSU is 14th, whereas we have not seen them in my rankings yet, and USC only falls 2 spots after their loss to Michigan. Starting us off at 12, we have the LSU Tigers. LSU is coming off their 3rd straight win since losing to USC in Week 1. Led by their quarterback Garrett Nussmeier, the team seems to improve as their quarterback play does. Nussmeier and the Tigers will need to continue to get better if they are going to compete for a college football playoff spot, facing 4 more ranked opponents in their schedule. Another Tigers team sits at 11, moving down 3 spots from their ranking of 8 last week, the Missouri Tigers. Mizzou is sitting at 4-0 and looks to be one of the best teams in college football on paper. And if we are only looking at results, then you can argue that this team deserves to be higher. But after their close win against a good Boston College team, many expected the Tigers to dominate a middling Vanderbilt team. Missouri was able to escape with a win at home that could have ended differently if Vandy had a better kicker. Missouri does keep piling up the wins, and for that you give them credit, but the teams that move past them have been more convincing in their results. Cracking the top 10 for the first time is Utah. The Utah Utes had an impressive display on Saturday, dominating a good Oklahoma State team for 3 quarters, until a rally brought the game close late. And while the near collapse in the 4th quarter asks some questions of this team's ability to finish, the fact that Utah was able to look this good without their star quarterback Cam Rising, who is set to return any week, bodes well for the Utes. Miami continues to dominate opponents and finds themselves moving up a spot to 9th in my rankings. The Hurricanes dominated a competitive USF team and shut them out in the second half. Cam Ward continues to look like the Heisman frontrunner and leads a dynamic Hurricanes offense that ranks 2nd in the country. In my opinion, Miami should have no problems as they face more competitive teams down the stretch. Back at spot 8, after a few weeks, are the Penn State Nittany Lions. Penn State is coming off an impressive performance against Kent State, scoring 56 points while keeping the shutout. A very boring blowout win was exactly what this team needed to show that they are back to their dominant ways, and a great tune-up as they host a red-hot Illinois team that is coming off a huge win versus Nebraska. Oregon remains at 7 for the 3rd consecutive week. After some less-than-convincing wins against Idaho and Boise State, the Ducks were able to break out with a dominant win against their rivals, Oregon State. Oregon will need to be better as they continue, facing 3 more ranked opponents for their first year in the Big Ten. Going back to the official poll, we see that the voters have Michigan much higher than I do after their win against USC. And while you do have to give Michigan credit for winning the game, I think the result was more about what USC failed to do than Michigan being back. We have Missouri and Utah in the same places, and we have Miami, Oregon, and Penn State in the 7, 8, and 9 spots, just in different orders. Getting us started in the top 6 is Ole Miss, falling 1 spot from 5th last week. Ole Miss is coming off another impressive win against Georgia Southern, winning 52-13. Ole Miss falling isn't due to perceived weakness on their part. The team ahead of them has shown their same dominance, just against superior competition than Ole Miss has faced so far. Tennessee moves up 1 spot, passing Ole Miss on the rankings. Tennessee has done what Ole Miss has in terms of dominating their opponents, only against superior competition, dropping Oklahoma down the rankings and causing them to bench their starting quarterback and clobbering an NC State team out of the rankings entirely. This Tennessee team has it all: a dynamic offense, a superstar quarterback, and an elite defense. If both teams take care of business, that Bama matchup could be a preview of the playoffs. Alabama remains at 4 following their bye week. Alabama has looked like they have returned to their form of old. We will find out this week who the best in the old SEC is when Georgia and Bama face off in Tuscaloosa. Remaining at 3 is Ohio State. The Buckeyes continue to sleepwalk to dominating victories against bad teams. They should get their first real test against a decent Michigan State Spartans team this week. Staying at the number 2 position is Georgia. Like Alabama, Georgia is coming off a bye week before traveling to Tuscaloosa to face the number 4 ranked Crimson Tide. In the battle of the old SEC, these two teams lock horns in a matchup with huge top 25 and playoff implications. Texas remains at the number 1 spot after a dominant 51-3 victory against Louisiana Monroe. The Longhorns now turn their attention to SEC conference play and Mississippi State before facing Oklahoma and Georgia in back-to-back weeks. Not much to go over here, as the official poll and I agree on the top 6 rankings. I'm sure this will change over the course of the season. These are some of the teams that were on the bubble in my rankings. This is not an exhaustive list, and you could definitely have Nebraska on this list, but these are just some of the teams that I thought you could easily rank as well. Some of the teams I feel you cannot rank are the teams in this list. Go back to my rankings from last week to hear my full thoughts on why you cannot rank these teams this week. Texas A&M has not beaten any real competition, with their best when coming against an underwhelming Florida team. And after a 6-point win against a bad Bowling Green team, Texas A&M has no business being ranked at this point. Boise State is 2-1, and while I feel that they're going to be a good team this year, they have not played anyone, and their best victory comes against an FCS opponent. Listen to last week's video to hear my thoughts about the other 2 teams. Well, that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and let me know what you thought about my rankings. Like the video if you liked it, and comment down below with who you think is going to get the win this week. And I'll see you guys next time.
Let's run away.